Welcome to NeedleXChange, the podcast where we pull at the threads that connect artists, stories, and stitches from around the world. My name is Jamie Chalmers, aka Mr. X Stitch, and we are back with the second part of my NeedleXChange with the brilliant Deborah Simon. In this part of the conversation, we pick up where we left off and talk about how Deborah moved on from bears to rabbits in her soft sculptures, and how her scientifically surreal creatures have become even more intricate and otherworldly. She shares why she pushes herself into uncomfortable ideas and how she's experimenting with everything from gold work to reliquaries and even life-size tigers. If you're drawn to this sense of the mystical in textile art, definitely check out my episodes with Michelle Kingdom. That's NeedleXChanges 61 and 62, whose embroidered worlds are full of human figures, plants, and that same kind of otherworldly vibe. It's a great companion to this one. We talk about Michelle at the time. But for now, it's Deborah. And if you haven't visited her Instagram to see her magnificent beasts, then be sure to do so as well. If you're enjoying these conversations, please do subscribe. Share the episode with someone who is like-minded and let me know which bit inspired you, as that kind of connection does keep me going. I'll be back next week with somebody else from another part of the embroidered ecosphere and OMG, episode 100. So until then, enjoy the show. So what series have you done then? You've done a bear series. I was calling them that. You might have the I've completely missed the point of the series and you're like, actually, this is the venal series or...
No. There's the bears, rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
And those started out like the bears with, like a pedestal piece with the embroidery on them. And then I decided to hang them and make the bodies out of silk organza so that you could see through it. And the blood vessels became the armature inside the rabbits. And then I would embroider on the organza. But I'd also try to be very careful of the fact that you can see the embroidery on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So I would very carefully stitch so that, there wasn't that kind of messy backside, that it looked exactly the same front and back, which I kind of succeeded at. And then, so I did a series of those, and now I've kind of been working more with doing the organs and the body parts as other animals in the ecosystem within the animal. So I have a Siberian tiger going, and there are deer and ermine and leopards and things inside the structure of the tiger.
Now, how does that idea come about?
I just kind of do. I don't really know how to explain it.
It's fine. That's fine. Have you studied embroidery?
No.
Because you said early on, you said that embroidery, I don't know, it almost just happened to occur within the work or something.
Well, it did within the work, but I mean, I've been, my mom was doing embroidery, knitting, sewing. My grandmother was an amazing needlewoman. She had gorgeous needlework. So I grew up with, two grandmothers and my mom who were always doing some sort of needlework of some sort. My mom primarily knitted, and because she's right-handed and I'm left-handed, I never succeeded in learning how to knit until I became an adult and could look it up on YouTube, which was infinitely easier than learning it from my mother. So I don't know. I've probably around 6 or 7, I started cross-stitching. Mm-hmm. I'd always been more interested in embroidering, and because I think, it's more picture oriented. Mm-hmm. And, and I learned how to sew. I made a lot of my own clothes through college, but, I'd always had some sort of an embroidery. And then when I got to art school, I started doing needlepoint, but it was always, for me, was a relaxation method after school. Mm-hmm. For me, it was kind of fun to have something to work on where I had this, either a canvas with the design printed on it, or, a little booklet telling me what to do. And it was this kind of way of decompressing, after a day of crits. And
it's a lot better than reefer, which may be some people's method of choice. It's a lot healthier. Well done there.
No, I would do that. And so for a long time, that was my way of kind of decompressing after school. Mm-hmm. And I also was very resistant to putting it into my sculpture because it was seen as something quintessentially like a woman's issue, because I'm at the age where when I went to art school, there were a lot of people who were like, oh, you're a female sculptor. Why aren't women your subject?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, nobody asks men who sculpt naked women, why aren't you sculpting naked men? Mm. Like why should I have to do women? So I was always very resentful of being told, one, oh, a little woman like you, how can you sculpt these big, life-size figures? And then two, that they should be women because I'm a woman and I should be dealing with women's issues.
But you shouldn't be using women's crafts to deal with women's issues. You should be challenging with your medium.
I just, there was a part of me that was like, I don't want to go anywhere near anything like that. Like, I want this to be sculpture and like take it seriously and don't tell me my subject matter based on my gender. And then I would go home and do needlework. And so, for me to combine the two, it was kind of, it took a lot of internal struggle to really get me there.
Mm. Did you have any contemporaries that were using needlework?
There probably were, but not that I know of. I'm trying to think, like, who was I aware of? I mean, as I was starting to work on it, I kind of hit that wave of people doing needlework and art. And, so I was getting, there's sort of like two themed shows that my work falls into, either fiber or animals. And, and fiber was having a moment. So I definitely was able to take advantage of that. But I don't think, and that's, to me, that's like one of those things where I'm not sure if it's because I was subconsciously seeing it, like I was seeing it out there in the art world. And so it kind of molded my brain for a while. Or if, I had gotten to the point with embroidery and needlepoint where I was creating my own patterns anyway. Mm-hmm. So it was sort of a natural next step to just take it into my art, which is one of the reasons I taught myself knitting, is because then that became my way of relaxing after a day of doing art. Because now needlework is no longer, it doesn't fall into that category.
But never cooking for some reason, much to my husband's.
I am such an awful cook.
That's good. But so like to come forward to now then, and you were talking, about with the rabbits and you almost having to do a form of shadow embroidery where the back has to look the same as the front. And that's some pretty technique heavy stuff there. That's what sort of prompted that conversation, whether you've subsequently gone to study techniques to improve, or whether you've just, by the sounds of it, not made it up as you're going along, explored it using your own little science lab.
I've just done it myself. I like in the United States, I don't think we have an embroidery school. There's no Royal School of Needlework.
RSN have got something in San Francisco, I think. It's a bit of a schlep.
Well, I actually was living in San Francisco. That's where I went to undergrad, but I wasn't aware of its existence, or maybe it wasn't existing then. But I worked in a hobby store in San Francisco, and my little domain was the dollhouse area. And so there were these two guys who came in, and one of them was a huge dollhouse guy. And the other one was his partner who got stuck trailing along. But he had gone to the Royal School of Needlework, and he did amazing needlework. And that for me, that was like, oh my God, you could go to school for this, So there was like this little dream I had in my brain that, maybe one day I would go to the Royal School of Needlework. But of course, that never happened. I have been looking at their classes though, because I ordered gold to start learning how to embroider with gold and had no idea what was involved with it. And it's a lot more complicated than the teaching myself. So I started looking into their online classes, but I would have to get up at like 3 a.m. for them. And
I'm sure, I feel like they've got some learn as you go kind of courses in the online portfolio. I might be wrong. We'll have a word. I know they listen. Sort it out, RSN.
yeah, no, I have actually looked at some of their, like they have an online stitch guide thing. So that was where I ended up. And so that's another thing where, I've been doing like months worth of samples of gold work, but have not come up with anything I particularly like yet.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because goldwork tends to be quite sculptural as well, all in a sort of tiny stump work kind of way and that kind of thing. But it does lend itself, doesn't it? Like that would unlock the mysticism even more in your work, I would imagine.
Well, I have been doing a lot of stump work. I've been embroidering moths.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the gold work, I wanted to see how realistic I could get. So I was taking wool and wetting it and stuffing it into some molds that I had kicking around to mold the shape of the heart and the blood vessels, and then doing gold work over that. And then I was also trying, what is it? I think it's ornue. Is that what you call it?
Right. Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been trying that and haven't come up with anything that makes me really happy yet.
I was just reminded of Akumi, I'm going to get this wrong, Azumi Sakata, who I don't know if you follow her on Instagram. She's just called Zumi, but she's got gold work skills. I think she's in Tokyo. It's a bit closer than the RSM, but not maybe by much. But the kind of work she's done, when you said about moths, she does goldwork moths with eyes in them. They're quite unusual. She has this like quite weird take on things, but it might be that might seek to offer some useful inspiration as well.
Well, I'm working on an embroidered piece right now that I was trying to find a way to incorporate gold work into, and finally realized I was just forcing it where it didn't belong.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like one of those things where, 2 years from now, I may be like, this is what I'm going to do with my 3-dimensional gold work that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Hattie McGill as well, who I recently NeedleXChanged with. She's a bit of a gold work expert, so you could always like find her and seek her out about that. And do you think the embroidery suits the stuff? Because what's nice, I guess, is with your work, you've got these textile elements, so it seems like it's quite a happy neighbor within the scheme of what you're doing. Does it feel like a comfortable fit now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't even think twice about it anymore. And of course, like I've tried to find ways to make, everybody always says to me like, oh, you should just find some grandmother upstate to do your embroidery for you. And I'm like, no, that's the part I really enjoy. It's the relaxing, besides, by the time I figure it out, the piece is done and there's nothing to have a grandmother do because it's all over. But I've tried forever to find ways to speed the process up, and I always manage to make everything just more and more complicated. I took digital embroidery because I thought maybe there was a program like, the equivalent of Photoshop, where I could just do everything in this program and then send it out and have somebody digitally embroider it for me. But then I discovered that was totally not the case.
Yeah. Yeah, probably not. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it. There is plenty that can be done. Pete Tarrant, who I've also NeedleXChanged with, he's a world-class machine, like digitized embroidery person. But it feels like your aspirations might not be met by the reality of the technology, however good it is. Yeah,
exactly. And then I've noticed more and more people, I guess they're calling it thread painting, where you're just sort of freehand sewing on the machine. And I sort of think about trying that, but I'm not quite sure I'm going to get what I want out of that.
And also, I mean, But I think the process is probably something that is an intrinsic part of the making. If you're spending a lot of time thinking about it before you start, then there must be a relief when it comes to the making, like you say, because of the slowness and the resonance and stuff. You've exhibited at places like the International Museum of Surgical Science, and I'm interested in how the science community sees what you're doing and what they may think of it.
Honestly, I don't know.
They let you, so I suppose that's a positive.
Yes, yes, that is. But, I dealt with the art curator there, so I very, it's funny for all that, art and science overlap. I don't often see that many scientists at openings coming up to me saying like, oh, I find your, blah, 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 really interesting.
Yeah. Is that a seeker, dear? That's what you want them to be saying.
Right.
Clearly. I mean, do you have a responsibility to aim for accuracy? Is that what you're trying to do in the work? I know there's a playfulness perhaps, but
I'm actually always battling that because I'm so anal about being accurate that sometimes I think it's almost to the detriment of the piece.
Right.
So for me, accuracy comes easily. It's pulling back and making decisions that are more aesthetic. Like saying, okay, that's not an accurate representation of a red squirrel, but it works. So I'm going to leave it, even though the neck is too long, or it's kind of like I'm striving to be El Greco, but I'm really more accurate.
But what it's reminding me of is what you were saying before about those old illustrations, though, and the trade-off between the accuracy of science and the fact that they would have lain someone's spleen out because that was the only way that you could draw it or something. And maybe there's the same thing there. You've got that trade-off between, but with those drawings that have already happened, you have to accept those as what they were. You don't get to have the conversation about the arrangement of those. So you get to turn your attention to your work in the same way. Whereas I would look at that deer and just be like, that's magnificent. And I accept it because I haven't seen 17 versions of it that have existed in your head. So I don't know any different. Whereas with you, you're just always going to be a bit like,
Well, for me, I'm not I am very much a process-oriented person, but my work isn't about the process. Like, I don't want anyone to know how I made it. Like, that's not important to me in the final product. What I want is something that's seamlessly beautiful, that conveys what I want to say, and how I get there, I don't really care, but it needs to be done well, whatever it is.
Yeah. And that's the magic. That's the magic behind the science. That's what I think. I really like that. Yeah, no, I love it. So you don't make occasional tables out of them. To go back to my very first question, then you've never thought about balance a piece of perspex on the back of one of the bears and use it as a cocktail accessory?
No, I don't. I do talk to them.
Okay. Let's touch on that for a minute. Do you?
I'll say hi to them when I walk into the studio.
Do you give them names?
No,
that would be weird. Talking to them is fine.
Don't name them.
and then Siberian tiger. So that's a challenging piece that you're going for. Was there a particular reason why you chose that? Was it because it's about as magnificent as you could think of? Or something?
Well, honestly, it's like most of those ideas. When I'm starting a new body of work, or my work is taking a step in a new direction, I'm very resistant. The idea drags me kicking and screaming. And so that's usually a sign to myself that I'm heading somewhere interesting, because I'm resistant. And I was very resistant to doing a tiger because it's, thing with bears and rabbits, they're very culturally loaded animals that have, rabbits are anything from a pest to Peter Rabbit to the Velveteen Rabbit. We all have, bears are the same way. There's a lot of opposing symbols and contradictions about them. Whereas a tiger, just about every culture in the world feels the same about them. They're awe-inspiring, they're magnificent, they're lethal, they're terrifying, they're gigantic, they're beautiful, they're worth a ton of money. So for me, I was really kind of struggling with how to view the animal. And so as I was thinking about the Siberian tiger and kind of, trying to come up with reasons not to do it, even though my brain kept going back to it, I realized that it was sort of interesting in a sense of how we view the value of animals. Because if you look at it from a conservation point of view, it's a keystone species, charismatic megafauna. A lot of land is preserved under, if you're preserving tiger land. But also, it brings in a lot of money. If you're going to conserve an animal and you want a poster child, you can't really beat the tiger. The only thing that probably brings in more money is a panda. And also, and then there's a religious element to them, especially in Asia. It figures in religions, it figures in, like in the Amur River region, where you have different indigenous tribes. Tigers are a big part of their religion. And then also just like the hard cold cash of it. Like, how much money does a dead tiger bring you?
Mm.
And, like, tiger penis is worth more than gold per kilogram. And so, like, a tiger brings in a lot of money. It's understandable why people poach them. Like in India, you can support your family. You've got dowries for your daughters. You just got to get it smuggled into China. And that's, you can usually find a border guard who you can bribe into doing that.
Mm.
So, it's just sort of three different ways of looking at the animals. So it's become kind of, in a sense, the sculpture is heading more towards being a reliquary. How you go into churches and you see these gorgeous reliquaries, and there's just been so much time, and there's so many, like, semi-precious stones and gold and all these different elements that go into that object. And I think maybe that's where the gold work was starting to come in for me, because you see these beautiful, embroidered pieces that have got gold and everything on them. And so I was thinking about the value of the object as well. So that's kind of where that's going.
Mm.
And so then, the tiger is also kind of fed into the embroidery, because in my vain effort to speed myself up, I decided, like, well, what if I did an embroidery where I did a digital painting, printed it on fabric, and then I could embroider, specific areas, like do the face and do the body. And so that's what I'm working on right now, as an embroidery, and beating it. And so instead of speeding myself up, I've made it just that much more complicated. And the original version, I printed it out on paper, and my husband took one look at it, and he's like, "What decade are you planning to finish that in?" And I was like, "All right, maybe I should print it smaller."
He's like, "Do you know what? You're in the middle of it and you're happy, so we'll just roll with that." Rather than you
Yeah, well, I'm supposed to have it done by October, so I'm certain to think about how can I make this go quicker.
I wanted to just, something you said a little while ago, I just wanted to pick up on, because it's an interesting thing to me, which is the thing that you said, that you were trying to resist it. And it was the fact that you noticed you were trying to resist it that made you realize it was a direction you should be going in. And I think that's a profound thing. Like, I'm aware of that. Sometimes I can tell that there's a thing I don't want to do. And it's quite funny when you get to a point when you don't turn away from that. You have to stand and look at it, don't you? And sort of understand. And I just wondered whether you've got a bit of a philosophy about that. I'm just curious.
I guess in some ways it comes out of, when I made the shift to working on the polar bear and did that first embroidered piece, I'd really been dissatisfied with where my work was. And a friend of mine said to me, don't mediate anything. Like, whatever the ideas are that you're having that pop into your head, don't dismiss them.
Hmm.
And that was where that polar bear came from. And so, and that was when I sort of realized, like, oh, That's when I was thinking about how resistant I was to the idea. And it would be an idea that it would be like, nah, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. That maybe I should pay attention to that. And that's where my process of thinking about things for months on end comes in.
Right.
Because the tiger just kept coming back again and again and again. And so, I sat down and I did some reading. There's a very good book about Siberian tigers, about a specific tiger that was stalking a man and killing it, who eventually stalked him and killed him and his dog. But it's a fascinating look at Siberian tigers and Russian conservation and things like that. So, it's just more of learning to not turn away from what's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I wonder whether that comes from like repetition gets you become hardy to that. I feel like there needs to be something of that.
Maybe. Or stubbornness.
Like I know recently I've had quite a few awkward conversations with people now, and now I realize I don't mind awkward conversations. Maybe it's because I'm older, but I've done them a few times now, having to say really uncomfortable things to people because you have to, because of the position you're in or whatever. And you think the first time you think someone's just going to clean punch me in the face. It's not like that. But do you know what I mean? You've worst case scenario of what it could be. But actually, the more you do it, you become hardy to it because you recognize it as comfortable as it is. It's never going to be as bad as your brain would imagine it will be. And I'm only talking about that. But it's that thing, isn't it, of just going, nevertheless, I persist.
Yes. Yeah. And well, it in a way, I realize it's probably an early lesson from my mother, I can be quite anxious about, the unknown future. And, when I was a kid and I would be worrying about things, my mother would always sit down with me and say, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And what's worse than that? And then what's worse than that? And eventually you get to like, I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm going to school the next day and I'm worried about a test, chances of me dying from it are really pretty slim. And I hated it when my mother did that. Oh my God. It would just be, as a kid, I'd hate it when she sat down and did that, but she was right. So I do a version of that in my brain now, like, well, so what? I do it and it fails. What's going to happen? I've wasted a month on this. Let's move on and do something else.
But then I also read an interview with you where you talked about rejections, and it was something like you had like 40 rejections before somebody accepted your work into a show or something like that. And I guess that's another example of that, right?
Yeah. I was really grateful that I had a painting professor who told me that. He said that he's actually also English. He'd gone to the Royal Academy of Art. Is that what it is?
Okay. Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Yeah. Somehow ended up in San Francisco. He's an amazing teacher. And he said to me that you will get 50 rejections before you get your first yes. And that was really good to know. Because I think that I just, I don't know if I would have given up, but having that number and expectation in my head really helped as they all rolled in, all of the no's.
I was going to say, because let's face it, you get to like 30 rejections, you are going to have a good layer of self-doubt there. But it's good to think that you're going, well, I'm about halfway through.
Yeah. And then, there are also been times that it's been a mix of being helpful. Like during that time period where I was getting all those no's, a friend of mine, I had applied to a nonprofit space for a show. And a friend of mine knew the director and he had asked about my application or had mentioned that he knew me or something and found out that I had been like in the final consideration and, they had like 4 shows. I, was in that top level and just didn't end up getting it. And so that was sort of like, well, why didn't you like me enough to give it to me? But on the other hand, it was also like, well, I'm almost there, Every once in a while I get rejections of like, well, you were a finalist, but you didn't get it. And it's sort of like, well, do I want to know this or not?
Yeah. Yeah. So close. Yeah. But it's a good turnabout, isn't it? I think there's something to be learnt there, particularly if you're starting out. So what are you saying? 50 rejections. 50 rejections and you're onto a winner.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I wasn't counting, but I must have been somewhere in the 40s when I got the first yes.
Excellent. That's it. Yeah. The first couple of blows are mighty, but by like the dozen or so, you just like, yeah, whatever, isn't it? Carry on like a paper cut.
Well, most of the time, like yesterday, I literally got 2 rejection emails in 5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, and they were both from things that were long shots. So, for me, I like the fact that I didn't get either of these things. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But every once in a while, I apply to something that I get rejected from, and it just really hurts.
Oh, bless. You're still human after all, Deborah. That's what it is.
Yeah, or something you just really worked hard, you really wanted, and it just doesn't come through.
Yeah, there's plenty of things that we're applying for to do with this art gallery that I'm setting up at the moment, like funding and stuff like that. And I'm just blindly going, it's going to work. I refuse to accept. I'm sure if it doesn't work, I'll just be like, oh, crap. But for now, there's no alternative. It has to work.
A gallery sounds very exciting.
Oh, yeah. Because I was thinking, I was just making some notes now, a little list in my head, actually, just thinking, because the gallery it's in my town in Crewe where there isn't a gallery. It's a 2-floor small department store, clothes store, 2 floors that we've convinced someone to buy, and we're hoping to get funding to turn it into a gallery. It's right in the centre of town. And part of my long-term dream was to have a dedicated like embroidery and textile art gallery. So I made a little note here of you and a couple of other people who might make quite a good group show. I'll put it down for like 2031. See what we think.
Right, I might have this tiger done by then.
That would be good. I was looking at the deer and I was thinking, how is she going to get that across the other side of the world or whatever? Like that.
Oh my god, the tiger, I just had the armature built for it because I realized like I couldn't get it out my door. I had to design an armature that where I can take all the arms and the legs off because otherwise it just isn't going to fit through the door.
I always thought that. I remember once we went to a thing and I saw some Henry Moore sculptures that are like 9 foot high, and you just think, imagine building that and then going, oh crap, I can't get it out my door. Like rule 101.
That was my thesis project. I built the thing and I put it on a dolly to get it, out the door to go to the school gallery down in Soho. And it fit by like a 64th of an inch.
That's so funny, isn't it?
And I was just like, oh my God, it never even occurred to me to check.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, never. It's like rule 101 of monument. That's probably what you would have learned at monument school. They're like, rule 101.
Yeah, no, that was when I learned to make sure I could get stuff out the door. And I had this, I was just like horrified. I'm like, oh my God, the opening's tomorrow. It's my thesis show. I can't get this thing out the door.
Can I do signs from the show going, right, you need to go down this way 3 blocks.
Get on the subway, go up to Chelsea. Yeah, no, it was a moment of panic. So as I was mocking up the tiger, it was like, all right, I've got to think about being able to take the paws off so I can get it out the door. Not to mention, like with the deer, I can get it out the door, but I haven't quite figured out how to ship that thing. It's going
to need quite a big box and a lot of packing peanuts. Go large on the peanuts.
I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping that by the time I show that, somebody else will be covering the shipping.
Yeah. Well, I'll work on it. I'll add it to my list. Cover shipping of incredibly crazy objects. Perfect. Right. Let's get on some tough questions. I am aware that you are a fan of an audiobook, so I'm going to start out with let's start out with good books that you've read or listened to. Do you have a favourite book that you listen to / read, or what was the last good one?
Well, I mean, I listen to 2 types of books in the studio. Mm-hmm. If I need to really focus on what I'm doing and want to be able to phase in and out of what I'm listening to, then I will tend to listen to things I know. Like I'll put on Game of Thrones or something.
Is that like, just as a cut in here, is that like, so I've listened to the Game of Thrones book on Audible, and it was like when it first came out, and there's a guy called something Detrice, and I can't remember his first name now.
I love him. He's great.
Because he does all the accents, doesn't he? And increasingly, as more and more people go, and I reckon he just must have had this list that was like, right, all of those guys, be a bit Welsh. or whatever. Like, it's an incredible piece of work for just one guy reading, isn't it?
Yeah. And so and then that's the other thing, because, I've read the books, I've listened to them, and I've watched the HBO series. I can be focused on like, all right, what do I want this deer head to be doing? And I can completely zone out for 10 minutes, being totally focused on my deer head, and then come back in and he'll be like Tyrion. And then, I'll know exactly where the story's going. And so, but like if I'm embroidering or I'm doing something that's more just like labor and it has to be done, but it doesn't take a lot of my brain, then, it depends. Like sometimes if it's hours and hours of work with a looming deadline, like the other day I was listening to, it was a Ruth Ware mystery, or like John le Carré. I like and right now, and then sometimes I'll listen a lot of science and history. There was a fascinating book that I listened to a while ago that was about the influence of Wagner on different artistic and literary movements through history.
Okay.
And that was fascinating because, for us here in the States, I don't know if people tend to shy away from Wagner because of the anti-Semitism and the association with the Nazis.
Right.
Like when I was in high school and reading Joyce and Willa Cather and all of that, after listening to this book, I realized that Wagner had a profound influence on those writers. And so I have no idea if it got skipped because, at least half the class was Jewish, or if it got skipped because they simply just didn't have time to deal with those kinds of tangential references.
Right.
But, and then right now I'm listening to a book about the history of the end of the world.
Okay.
Which is fascinating, starting back with, like 1260, which was one of the first big, this is the date the world is going to end. So there were tons of, crazy Christian sects at the time getting ready for the rapture. And then, and then this book also goes through a lot of the movies and literature, like Cormac McCarthy's The Road, Dr. Strangelove, Frankenstein, post-apocalyptic type things.
With these cults that are convinced that the world's going to end on a set day, 3 weeks afterwards, do they go, oh, we'll have to choose a different date? Or do they just quietly sort of sidle out of the picture?
Some of that, it's both. Right. Yeah, that's one of the things he talks about is like, if you're going to, predict the end of the world, you should do it after you're dead. So that way, if you're wrong, you'll never know. But if you do it like it's going to be next Tuesday at 5:00 in the evening and 6:00 rolls around, then everybody knows you're wrong.
Yeah. It's going to start growing a mustache and move somewhere.
Yeah, I know. But there are a shocking number of people who are like, all right, 2 months from now, world's going to end. And I'm thinking like, wow, you got to really be certain about that. Yeah,
it's a bold claim, isn't it? But you got to own it, I suppose, if you're going to commit to that kind of thing. Do you listen to much music?
I do. In the studio, I tend to listen to audiobooks, but at work, I will listen to, I'm a huge Nick Cave fan.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, Nick Cave, Twilight Sad, a lot of punk, post-punk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as picky about...
So, as Brooklyn music, I was thinking Brooklyn's a bit post-punk, isn't it?
Well, it's more probably you can blame it on my teenage years in Boston.
That's so that's interesting then. So you don't really go for music when you're stitching and making sculptures. That has to be kind of wordy.
Yeah, well, I think it's because my work is so labor intensive. There's always an aspect of it that's just kind of mind-numbingly doing the work, and I want something for my brain to attach to.
I can dig it, to be honest. I quite like listening to music when I'm driving, but if I'm going to go on a drive that's like 2 hours, then I will want to listen to something more meaty. Do you do podcasts much?
I do podcasts occasionally. What I love is a good 20-hour book.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why Game of Thrones is so wonderful, because you've got 5 24-hour, 28-hour books.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good use of a credit on Audible.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Brooklyn Public Library because they will also loan you out audiobooks because I blow through my credits from Audible too quickly.
I do. I've got a little hack with our local library here where I don't have a card for our library, but my daughters do, and they've been getting out quite a lot of crime fiction recently, but apparently they really like it.
You know, my husband, I'm on my husband's account, so he's, he's currently reading the end of, looking at the end of the world. I just
really screws.
Yeah, I know. So I usually have a waiting list, but like there's some, I can't remember what book I put on, but I'm like, 74th on the waiting list. So it's going to be a while.
Do you have any time to watch television? Are you quite like when you're making, are you quite structured? Are you like in your studio for set periods of time during the week, or is it like you're there until the job's done?
Well, I work in the film industry, so when I'm working, I'm doing like 50, 60-hour weeks. And so I tend to have an embroidery project at home. And my goal is usually to come home and embroider for an hour in the evening, or it happens about half the week. And the other half of the week, I just simply fall asleep on the sofa. And then weekends are in the studio. But when I'm not working, which, like I'll be working maybe 7 to 8 months of the year, and then the rest of that I'll be off. Then I get up in the morning, I come to the studio, I work in the studio all day. And then if I'm at home and I want to work, I'll work on whatever the embroidery is. Like, my husband is a big baseball fan, so I personally don't really care how the Yankees are doing, but I get a lot of embroidery done during 9 innings.
Yeah. Reasonable. That's quality time together there, I would say. Both doing the thing you love, just happens to be in the same space.
Yeah, right.
So have you got, let me think, you've done books, TV shows, any recommendations, any firm favourites, Game of Thrones, perhaps notwithstanding?
I'm trying to think of well, I think the last thing that we watched that I really liked was a Hulu series called Paradise.
Oh, is that the one, the guy where it's kind of like he's something to do with like a presidential guard or presidential aide or something?
Yeah, and they're living in the mountain in Colorado.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. Right.
It was very good. Talking about the end of the world. That was
another one. There's a theme.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy House of Dragons? Did you do that?
We started watching House of Dragons. The problem is because one of us works in the industry, one of us can't stay up late enough to watch much of anything by the time we're done with dinner. So we got through season 1 of House of Dragons. We're somewhere in the middle of season 2. But quite frankly, the only thing we're really watching at the moment is baseball.
Okay, it's fair.
Yeah,
it's fair. What about films? And actually, right at the start, you were like, you're not sure if you've got an interesting fact. I've got an interesting fact about you that we will talk about if all else fails. But films, do you have a favourite film?
Oh, boy. That's like books. I mean, it just depends. I was thinking, it's funny. The other day, I don't know how I got on the thought, but I think it was a friend asked me like what the most influential art shows I'd seen, over my lifetime were. And so then I was thinking about that, but I was also thinking that like movies like Wings of Desire fell into that category.
Okay.
Or like Peter Greenaway, Zed and Two Knots, and Prospero's books. And then more recently, like we went and saw Oppenheimer, and that was pretty incredible.
I went for the Barbie part of the Barbenheimer weekend over here. I think I haven't Oppenheimer yet. Do you know what it is? Oppenheimer, it's 3 hours, isn't it? So I can guarantee that my wife's going to fall asleep twice if we watch it at home. Really got to space it out over like a bank holiday weekend or something.
Well, my husband wanted to see it on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
So we got actual tickets and went in and saw it on.
Did they give you an intermission for that? Because that's a long old schlep.
No, there was no intermission.
But was it so good it didn't need an intermission?
I actually really enjoy it. I mean, I like Christopher Nolan films, and I did enjoy Oppenheimer. Just also, one, the history and the story, but the visuals were quite nice. We both enjoyed Barbie, but I think we watched that at home. And then what's the last movie we went out? Oh, God, what is the name of it? Megalopolis or whatever it was.
Wow. Another beast of a film.
Man, that was a slog. Everyone I know either loved it or hated it, and I was just like,
at least you've got an opinion. I'm just going to thrive off the opinions of other people and go, it's a bit of a slog.
It's a bit of a slog, yes.
Right. So come on then. A fact that not a lot of people know about you. I've got a fact that people who know you will know about you, but I'm still interested in it if all else fails. But have you got anything?
Maybe I was thinking on my bike ride to the studio that really what I started out wanting to be was an astronomer.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I remember when I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade, our teacher asked us to do a portrait of us as an adult in our chosen career. And it's me in a white lab coat with a telescope as an astronomer. And then in high school, I ran into the parallax angle and the higher math that was necessary for astronomy, and very quickly realized that probably what drew me to astronomy was all of the mythology around the constellations.
Right.
And the pretty pictures from the Hubble telescope.
I heard that Parallax Angle was Charismatic's Megafauna's controversial 3rd album.
Yeah, right.
That's right, isn't it? The one where they went a little bit Britpop is very strange. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about the fact that you're a scenic artist.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, I guess for me, I feel like everybody knows that. But
imagine that I can't grasp what a scenic artist is. What is a scenic artist?
Okay, so all right, let's take Game of Thrones, which I would have loved to work on, but that, of course, was all filmed in England, Ireland, and Croatia.
Shout out to Michelle Carragher.
Well, so a scenic, we would, so usually what happens is production designs it. The carpenters will build the sets. And so if you're at Winterfell and you're walking through all the stone hallways, they're all painted by scenics. That's probably all cardboard or foam. And, I would, sometimes I'm carving stones out of foam and then covering it in concrete, and then we're painting it to look just like a stone wall, painting the floor to look like wood, and then the Iron Throne, that would be built, and then we would paint it to look like metal and things like that.
It's not made of actual swords.
No, I'm assuming that thing is either wood or plastic. I don't know. I mean, that one might have actually been sent out to a prop shop to be built. It depends. Right now at work, I am sculpting and smoothing out 9-foot tall spray cans.
Whoa.
Yeah.
For a thing that means an NDA means you can't tell us what it's for, right?
Right. Yeah. No, there's a million NDAs. And it will be in the background out of focus for 20 seconds. And, there are 4 scenics working for 3 weeks to make this thing.
With the backgrounds of a lot of things that we would see, and I guess I'm not thinking of say, for some reason I was just thinking of Friends and sitcoms, but that doesn't count because that'll be a purpose-built set.
No, I mean, I would work on something like Friends. I mean, most of what I've worked on is just dreadful, and I could never bring myself to watch any of it.
Right. But is it a lot of that stuff just, if it looks like it's made of stone, it probably isn't made of stone. If it looks like it's made of metal, it probably isn't made of metal. Is that a fair, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell when you look at it?
I can tell. I mean, I'm always impressed with really well done sets. It's like when I used to work at the Bronx Zoo in their exhibition department. So if you go to a zoo with me, I'm miserable. I'm like, oh my God, who did that rock? Look at the sight lines on this. Who built this exhibit where you can see that behind it? And so I'm kind of the same way, I remember watching some episode of Lost when that was back on.
Yeah.
And there's somewhere where it's supposed to be, boulders collapsing on them, and it's so obvious they're styrofoam, you know.
So going to see the Harry Potter experience down near London with you would not be enjoyable because you'd still be like...
It depends. I mean, if it's really well done, I'll be like, wow.
Okay. Everyone else will just be like in awe of it, and you'll be like scratching a piece of wood to see if the paint comes off.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm always I was watching. Yeah, what were we watching? Oh, it was the Perry Mason reboot that came on a couple of years ago with what's his name? He was in The Americans.
I'll believe you. I couldn't tell you offhand.
Yeah, I know, but there was this scene where he's walking down the hallway of an old rundown hotel, and there were a couple camera angles where you could really see how they had painted and aged the hallway, and I was like, wow, those guys were good.
And if you say no, this is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But are you able to say any program? Like, is there work that we could watch that you're proud of, Mikiko?
Let's see. Well, if you can manage to sit through it, I worked on vinyl.
Okay. Oh, I've got that. I nearly watched that. Nearly.
Yeah, nearly. Well, I mean, I made it through most of the pilot, and then I gave up. So when I first started as a scenic, my father very excitedly and dedicatedly watched everything I worked on, and then vinyl finally did him in. I was just like, Dad, you do not have to watch everything I work on. So let's see. I worked for many years on Power. I don't know if you guys got it over there. It's like drug dealers and FBI. It's your very violent. You know. Let's see what else have I worked on. That would be.
Would you ever do any of the, like, if it's a set and there's a window and in the window behind that you're supposed to be able to see the outside world, do you ever do any of that stuff, or is that somebody else?
Only if it's an emergency. Right. Because nowadays you print that. It used to be that the scenics would paint that. And in fact, that's part of our test, that you have to know how to do that. But now they just go, I mean, like there was one set where there's a house. And, the set is the inside of the house, but there is a location out in Queens that is the outside of the house. And so somebody must have taken a picture of, the street, and then that picture gets sent to a company that then prints what's called a drop, which gets pulled out, So like with Mad Men, that was shot in LA, but set in New York, and all those scenes where, like, they're on a terrace looking out over the city. The city is just printed on a big giant curtain.
It's like the Truman Show or something. It's like it's all pretend.
It is exactly like that. So we don't do that, but there was one episode where they didn't have time to print one of those, and we had to paint that in a day. And it looked okay. I mean, if you put frost on a window, everything looks much better.
Yeah. The one I never really understood is when they set scenes and they put like smoke to make just the light shine through the windows in a way that it never does in real life. But the sort of atmosphere when you're in a room like that, and they're like.
Oh, and I hate it when they use the smoke machines. It sets my asthma off. There's a scenic, there's usually every production has one scenic that moves with the camera crew. I mean, most of us are offset, and but there's always one that's there for emergencies and little things for the camera that are you need the day of the shoot. And God, when they would do that fog machine, I'd have to go out into the hallway and just get out of the room for a little bit.
That's probably quite a satisfying contrast, that kind of work, isn't it? Because I'm sure it's still very creative, but a lot of the decision-making presumably is just taken out of your hands. So you can just crack on with that and let the rest of your brain animalize?
It's, it's a mix. I mean, because sometimes you're just a glorified house painter, and it's really no different than, like, joining two walls together, making it smooth and rolling paint. And then, other times it's, faux finishing and because there are not as many sculptors as there are painters in the union, I often end up with sculpting jobs. And I like the sculpting jobs because it gives me, I end up having to do more planning and thinking.
Can you do a good ceiling rose? Is that within your wheelhouse? Do you get to do those sorts of things?
Well, usually we cast them, and nowadays so much stuff is CNC.
Right.
You know, a lot of stuff that I would have been sculpting is now just 3D printed or.
So it's like if it's organic, then that's when you guys step in.
I do a lot of carving of rocks because, you know, in the industry you can order vacuum formed or pulp art rocks, but then, you know, they fit together in sheets and they all look exactly the same. So a lot of times, you know, there will be times where you don't use them because it's just not right for what you need. So I do spend a lot of time carving rocks.
Well, I'm very excited that now I'm going to be scouring the television channels looking for, what did you say, 7-foot high spray cans or something or other. So that'll be like, I know, see, hang on, pause it, rewind, like that. I know that.
Well, you know, one of the first shows I worked on, I don't know if it showed in the UK. It was originally an Australian series called The Slap.
Oh, yeah. Where a kid gets slapped and it's like 7 stories or something, isn't it? About the same thing.
Yeah, it was about like some kid who gets slapped at a party or something. So there was an American version of it. And I spent weeks working on what was supposed to look like ancient Greek ruins, you know, like an ancient Greek statue, you know, of a torso and of a horse head that one of the wealthy characters had in his home. And so I was excitedly watching the episode because it was the first time I was ever going to see any of my scenic work. And it was so out of focus for like a 1/10 of a second in the background.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there it was. Did you see it? Did you see it? And my husband's like, stop talking. I can't remember what they're saying. And I'm like, no, there's my horse head.
Yeah.
Like, what? I can't see anything.
Yeah, I know a couple of people who've had like cross stitches in the background. Like when Girls was on, I'm pretty sure I knew somebody who had a cross stitch on the wall of one of their houses or something that you'd see for no more than a second in total.
Yeah, I've had work in. There's a show coming up that Black Rabbit. I don't know when it's going to get released, but it's Jude Law and Jason Bateman. Actually, looks like it's going to be good. So I have a print in that, but I am assuming that the room is so dark that you're not going to be able to see it.
Yeah. It's so funny, isn't it? The lengths that they go to for that sort of stuff, you know, getting someone choosing a particular cross stitch to go on the back of a wall of a pretend TV show that may or may not end up in there or whatever. It's a bit.
Well, and then also, I mean, for a while, the style was to film everything basically in the dark. You know, I mean, there would be sets where I would spend weeks like doing faux marble work, and we might as well have just painted it white for all that you could see the work that we did. You know,
I thought that about House of Dragon, to be honest. I think me and Mary watched the first couple of episodes and we're just like, I can't actually see what's going on a lot. I don't know if it's me or what. And so I think we gave up on it.
No, it just seems to be a thing. Because I remember reading a review. I can't remember what show it was, but that was the moment where I realized it really was a thing and it wasn't just me, because the reviewer was like, oh my God, they turned the lights on.
Yeah, right. It's like,
you can see everything.
It's a good way of masking over.
Well, it's frustrating, all that work, and it's like, it's so dark you can't see it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm excited now. Deborah, thanks for having a needle exchange with me.
Thank you.